Finding equations of linear models. To find an equation of a linear model given some data. 1. Create a scattergram of the data. 2. Determine whether there's a line that comes close to the data points. If so, choose 2 data points. Pardon me, they don't necessarily have to be data points, so do keep that in mind. And these are points that you can use to find an equation of a linear model. 3. Find an equation of a line. And 4. Use a graphing calculator to verify that the points of the scattergram or the points lie on the scattergram or close to the line of best fits. So in this case, let's go through a rough example. Just a quick review or overview. Keep in mind, y equals mx plus b is our basic line. It's a linear equation, agreed? And we have what we call the slope is the m value, the y-intercept is the v value, which we can write as a coordinate to state the complete intercept. 0, b, with 2 parentheses on the outside. So once again, notice the v value, that is our y-intercept. But we got to give it as a full coordinate to state the full y-intercept. So if we have the y-intercept, and let's start and say we have a coordinate 0, 3. Well, in our equation we can plug in the y-intercept. Y equals mx plus b, which is the 3 in this case. Okay, so let's say we have the slope formula. M equals, and you typically see it as y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. But in reality, you don't have to worry about which one's 1 and 2. What you mainly have to worry about is which coordinate do you want to put first and which one do you want to put second. You always have the y on top of the x for that same coordinate. For instance, first coordinate, 1, 4, we would put the y value, which is the 4, on top, and on the bottom we would put the 1. And notice that we would have a negative at the middle of the fraction sign. So second coordinate, let's say 3, 6. So in this case, we have the y, which would go on top, and the x, the 3, would go on the bottom. Now let's try this out. So m equals, and there's a fraction with a negative on top, negative on the bottom, in the center. This is literally our equation, full equation. All we need to do is plug in the right values, the ones we select. So let's say we put the 4, which is the y value, on top first. We have to put the 1 underneath. That's really the only critical part. So that way we don't have to label as y1 and y2 and then get them mixed up because there's a 1 in my coordinate, which becomes confusing. So just worry about having the y on top of the x for that same coordinate. So let's do the other one then. We have the y value of 6 on top of the x value of 3. And now we simplify. So 4 minus 6, well, that gives us negative 2. 1 minus 3 also gives us negative 2. Negative divided by a negative, that'll convert to a positive. 2 divided by 2, well, we can say cancels out, or remember, by canceling, we say it gives us a 1. 2 goes into 2 ones, so it gives us a 1. So notice that the negatives, negative times a negative, or negative divided by a negative, depending on how you prefer to see it, becomes a positive. Okay, so let's plug it into our equation from before. We had y equals mx plus 3, but now we have the slope. So now we can call it y equals 1x plus 3. Well, 1x plus 3. Keep in mind, we always have a 1 whether we have a 1 or not. So we could leave the 1 out, since in this case, just having an x tells us that we have 1x there. So the most simplified form of this would be y equals x plus 3. And this is technically our equation, final equation. So in this case, we were just given coordinates, and just as a random example, and we calculated basically the slope. We were also given the y-intercept for reference in this one. Quick sketch for us. So there it is. Notice that you will always start graphing at the y-intercept, 0, 3, and you're welcome to plot the other point if you want to, the 1, 4 and the 3, 6. But otherwise, do remember your slope tells you to go up 1 over 1. So from 0, 3, we would go up 1 over 1, and you'd put your next coordinate up 1 over 1 and put your next coordinate, etc. And do remember to connect your dots. I have for reference a TI-83 image. Okay, do notice that if you have a TI-84, it's very similar. There are very minute differences, so you should be able to use the same setup or same configurations as the TI-83. Okay, first off, let's turn it on. So on button. There we go, it's on. We have the number keypad. Do notice there's a dot at the very bottom. There's a negative sign at the very bottom. The negative is different than the subtraction sign. Do be aware of this. There's a negative and a subtraction sign. We also have the enter or equal, or if you notice at the very bottom, it says entry or solve for your calculator in different colors, depending on what calculator you have. Plus, minus, times, and division on the right side. On the left side, we have some other buttons, such as the x squared on the background. You have a different color of square root for that one. You have a log, or 10 to the x. ln, natural log, or e to the x, and some of the others I'll reference later. The one you want to worry about as well is the on-off button. If you push second on, it'll turn it off because it's the back labeling. For me, it's yellow. It works the off button, or if just pushing the regular on button will turn it on. There's a clear button up towards the right underneath my arrow keypad. There's a caret key, which means exponents, which we'll use in the future. And we have parentheses right above our number keypad. They're also a comma. We may not use it very often. The one we do care about is right next to our alpha button. On the left side, mine is green. You have an x, t, theta, and n. Don't worry about the t, theta, and n, but the x is your variable. So you're going to use that button quite often. Right after that, you have the stats, which is where you can graph basically your random location of points. In other words, data values. We also have a math button, which you can have, if you push, you'll see some other options that you have. We'll come back to those. Second mode right next to it gives us the option of quit. That makes it go back to your main screen. No matter what screen you're stuck on, second mode will give you back to your main screen. And for this one, you can typically clear out if you don't need anything from previously before. So graphing. That means we can go to y equals for this case. Press the y equals at the very top left. And we want to graph y equals x plus 3. In this case, x, once again next to my alpha button, x plus 3. And now I want to build a graph similar to what I have here. So we'll go to zoom, middle top button. And we'll do a zoom, let's go zoom standard. That gives us a 10 by 10 window size. So you can either hit enter or push down and hit enter on number 6, or push 6 and it automatically selects number 6. So once again, zoom, push 6 to select number 6, or go down and hit enter on number 6. Either way would work. So we now have a 10 by 10 window size. And now we can kind of see that we have our graph there. And it sort of looks like that. To verify that we have our graph correctly, we hit trace. Trace allows you to select any x value or move left or right on your graph. To push up and down, we'll switch to another equation, but I only have one, so it won't switch at all. So we are looking for 0 on the x. If I push 0, this should give me my y-intercept of 0, 3. It does. It gives me x equals 0 and y equals 3. Notice at the top, mine says y1 equals because it's the first equation that I typed in. Yours might just have a y1, depending on what version of a calculator you have. But it gives you a rough idea which equation you're looking at. Other coordinates. Let's look at the 1, 4 coordinate. Okay, so 1 for the x, it always allows you to enter the x value only. And it gives you the y value of 4. Hey, it is that coordinate. That means it's correct so far. And then the last coordinate, 3 is the x value, hit enter, and it gives you the y is 6. Yeah, so it looks like we got the correct graph. So that is one way to double check your graph or your answers as well. Do keep that in mind. You're welcome to try other features such as the second graph feature will give you tables. So this will make your life easier. You can complete tables from your calculator. Recommendation though, you're welcome to always revert to just doing one calculation for one of the numbers. Let's say pick 2, I get a 5. Then I'll come back to my table and check that I got the correct answer. And the rest of the values I can fill in from this table onto my table. So do notice, if you push up on the x, it allows you to go up for the negative values of x. Keep pushing down, gives you more values. If I try that in the y, it doesn't quite work that way. Whoop.